Hello everyone. Today we are going to review food chains. By the time we are done, we are going to review everything that we talked about so far in the last few weeks, and then we are going to do a STEM challenge. So first off, what is a food chain? Well, a food chain shows food, animals, and plants and what they need. It shows a sequence of transfers of matter and energy in the form of food that is needed by an organism. Plants convert solar energy to food by photosynthesis and are the primary food source. In a predator food chain, a plant-eating animal is eaten by a meat-eating animal. Now, what is a habitat? A habitat is the natural home or environment of a plant, animal, or other organism. Only certain species of plants and animals can adapt to a specific habitat or home. What type of habitat do you live in? Stop the video at this point and write down what type of habitat you live in. Return and start the video when you are done. First off, we need to review what is a producer. A producer is the first organism in a food chain. Plants are producers. They make their own food. They do this by using light energy from the sun, carbon dioxide from the air, and water and nutrients from the soil to produce their own food. This food is in the form of glucose or sugar that is made. We call this whole process photosynthesis. Moving up the food chain, we have to talk about what is a consumer. A consumer is an organism that obtains its food by eating other organisms. We are in fact consumers. Consumers can be herbivores or plant eaters. Some can be carnivores, animals that eat only meat, or an omnivore, animals that eat both plants and animals. What are you? Are you an herbivore, a carnivore, or an omnivore? Stop and think about what you are and write down your answer. When you are done writing down your answer, please return to the video. Now, we need to think about the different types of consumers. Every organism needs food in order to live. On the food chain, there are three types of consumers to focus on. The primary consumer is the herbivore, such as a rabbit. A secondary consumer eats the herbivore, like a snake. And finally, the tertiary consumer, they're at the top of the food chain, and they're the predators that have no natural enemies and will eat meat, such as a hawk or a wolf. What is a decomposer? A decomposer is an organism such as soil bacterium, could be fungus, or an invertebrate such as a worm that decomposes or breaks down organic material such as leaves, grass, and dead and decaying animals. Now, let's think about a scavenger. A scavenger keeps the ecosystem free of the bodies of dead animals. They break down the organic material and recycle it into the ecosystem as nutrients such as soil. They take on a secondary consumer role in the food chain. You might say they eat the dead remains of organisms no other animal would eat. Without them, food would surely pile up. Can you think of an animal that might scavenge on the side of a road that you've seen driving in a car? Stop the video at this time and jot down a scavenger that you have seen eat dead animals at the side of the road. When you are done, return to the video. Now, time for our STEM connection. It is sometimes hard working virtually to be able to create and build. So today what we're going to do is we're going to create a model of what plants need. You might include the following in your model. Now, we're needing a recognizable habitat that you need to make. We need to include a producer's, primary consumer, secondary, and tertiary consumer, a scavenger, a decomposer, and you need to label all the parts of the food chain. You can use arrows to show who eats who, and of course, you always need a title so we know what you made. Now let's think about what we could do at home to create this kind of model. You could take an old box from food and you can make a diorama. You could use paper from the recycle bin that you got in junk mail, and you could draw different animals and plants to be able to show the different kinds of producers and consumers. You could create a possible Flipgrid that might show different animals that you've drawn. You could do a little time lapse which would allow you to use other objects such as Legos and pieces that you have around the house to show different types of organisms within a habitat. It is up to you how you want to build this environment that showcases a habitat, producers and consumers, as well as those scavengers and decomposers, making sure that this is kind of like a really big end of the unit project, and it allows us to be creative. It also allows us to use our time this week as well as next week to culminate this activity and put it all together. So you get 2 weeks to do a STEM connection. Next week for science, check back in, show me what you have going on in a Flipgrid so we can see where you're at, and you'll get some extra bonus games and activities within our Flipgrid lesson. Moving on, let's think about a checklist. I will provide this checklist in the comments and below your Flipgrid. The checklist will include: is your habitat recognizable? Is it a desert? Is it a rainforest? Is it a deciduous forest? Is it a savanna? Any number of habitats that you can think of that we've talked about. Have you included a primary consumer, a secondary consumer, and a tertiary consumer? Don't forget about those producers, those plants within that environment that those consumers might be hiding in or eating. You might want to think about those scavengers, some kind of animal that's eating other dead animals, and decomposers, whether it be you showcase a worm or fungus or mushrooms. We also want to make sure that you label the food chain. And again, you can draw this, you can create a 3D model, but all of these components need to be there along with arrows to show who eats who. And don't forget that title. I am looking forward to you completing your final STEM activity to showcase what you know about the food chain. Checking in would be great on Flipgrid so I can see where you're at by the end of the week. And once again, we are all in this together.